Most people do not become mentally weak because they were born that way. They become weak because the world trains them to be distracted, to react too fast, to speak before thinking, to absorb noise and mistake it for knowledge. And in a society built on performance, imitation, and emotional manipulation, that makes the calm, observant, self-governing mind incredibly rare. If you have ever looked around and wondered why so many people talk confidently but think poorly, why they consume endlessly but understand very little, why they are informed on everything yet wise about nothing, this video is for you. Because intelligence is not just about what you know. It is about how well you can see through illusion. How long you can stay focused when others are being pulled in 10 directions. How honestly you can examine yourself when most people spend their lives avoiding themselves. And by the end of this video, I want to show you 7 daily habits that quietly sharpen your mind, deepen your judgment, and make you harder to manipulate in a world that profits from confusion. And stay with me to the end, because the final habit is the one most people ignore, even though it affects every thought they have, every emotion they feel, and every decision they make. Let's get into it. Intelligence is often treated like some fixed gift. Something you either have or you do not. A number on a test. A grade from school. A title on LinkedIn. A way to make other people feel impressed. But life has a way of exposing how shallow that definition is. You can meet people with degrees who cannot handle pressure. People who speak beautifully but cannot make wise decisions. People who know the language of success but fall apart the moment life stops cooperating. Real intelligence is not decoration. It is not image. It is not performance. Real intelligence is practical. It is how you think under stress. How quickly you adapt when life changes. How well you read people. How honestly you face reality. How wisely you choose your next move when emotions are high and certainty is low. That kind of intelligence is built quietly, deliberately, daily. The Stoics understood that. So did the more hard-edged observers of human nature who knew society is not always honest, fair, or rational. If you want to move wisely through this world, you need more than motivation. You need habits that strengthen your mind the way training strengthens the body. So in this video, we are going to walk through 7 habits that do exactly that. Not theories to admire. Not quotes to repost. Habits to live. The first one may be the most powerful in a distracted age. 1. Learn to focus completely. Look at the average day now. A person wakes up, checks notifications before even getting out of bed, scrolls during breakfast, half reads emails, half listens in meetings, responds to messages while pretending to work, then ends the day exhausted without being able to explain what they actually gave their full attention to. This is one of the quiet tragedies of modern life. People are not only losing time. They are losing depth. And when depth disappears, intelligence starts to flatten. Because a distracted mind cannot think deeply. It can only react quickly. And society rewards reaction. Fast opinions. Instant outrage. Immediate answers. But very few people stop to ask whether the speed of their response is destroying the quality of their thinking. That is why focus has become a kind of hidden power. Marcus Aurelius lived in a world full of war, betrayal, pressure, and political theater. He ruled an empire, yet still protected moments of stillness and reflection because he understood something most people still do not: if you do not govern your own attention, the world will do it for you. And the world is not interested in making you wiser. It is interested in keeping you stimulated. A scattered mind is easier to influence. Easier to sell to. Easier to provoke. Easier to exhaust. That is why deep focus is no longer just a productivity tool. It is a form of self-defense. Think about the moments in your life when you did your best thinking. Maybe it was late at night when everything was quiet. Maybe it was during a walk without your phone. Maybe it was when you finally sat down and faced a problem long enough to understand it. Clarity comes after sustained attention, not before. So start protecting it. Give one thing your full mind for even 30 minutes a day. No switching. No checking. No background noise pretending to be harmless. One task. One problem. One page. One decision. That alone will put you ahead of people who spend 10 hours busy but never fully present. You can use simple structure if it helps. 25 minutes of deep work, then a short break. Silence your notifications. Close unnecessary tabs. Put your phone in another room if you have to. And when your mind starts reaching for distraction, notice what is happening. That urge is not always boredom. Sometimes it is avoidance. Avoidance of difficulty. Avoidance of stillness. Avoidance of seeing how weak our attention has become. But every time you return to the task, you are training something powerful. You are teaching your mind not to obey every impulse. And that matters far beyond work. Because the person who can hold attention can hold thought. The person who can hold thought can see patterns. And the person who sees patterns clearly is much harder to deceive. 2. Read widely and consistently. There is a reason shallow minds are easy to impress. They have too little perspective. They hear one strong opinion and assume it must be truth. They encounter one confident personality and mistake it for wisdom. They repeat phrases they barely understand because it helps them feel included in the performance. Reading breaks that spell. A good book stretches your mind beyond your environment. It introduces you to lives you have not lived, failures you have not made yet, and truths that would have taken you years to discover alone. The smartest people across history were almost never mentally isolated. They lived in conversation with other minds. They read. They reflected. They borrowed insight from the dead, the distant, and the difficult. Marcus Aurelius did not arrive at wisdom by accident. Seneca did not write from emptiness. They were formed by dialogue with ideas bigger than themselves. And that matters now more than ever because modern content is designed for speed, not depth. People skim headlines. They listen to summaries. They consume fragments. Then they wonder why their thinking feels thin. Reading, especially sustained reading, does something different. It teaches patience. It develops nuance. It forces you to stay with complexity longer than the internet usually allows. And complexity is where intelligence matures. Fiction can make you more emotionally perceptive. It lets you live inside motives, contradictions, wounds, and desires that are not your own. That makes you less rigid, less arrogant, and more able to understand people. Non-fiction helps you organize reality. History teaches consequence. Psychology teaches pattern. Biography teaches the cost of greatness and the price of blindness. Philosophy teaches judgment. And when you read all of it, not just what confirms your existing worldview, your mind becomes more flexible and more difficult to trap. That last part matters. Because one of the easiest ways to control people is to keep them mentally narrow. Give them one tribe, one lens, one emotional script, and they will start confusing repetition with truth. Reading widely resists that. If you are busy, start small. 10 pages a day. That is enough. Not because 10 pages changes your life in a night, but because repeated contact with serious ideas changes how you think over time. If you cannot sit with a book every day, use audiobooks during commutes, walks, or chores. Turn dead time into thinking time. But do not just read to collect quotes. Read to confront yourself. Underline what unsettles you. Write down what challenges you. Ask where you are still naive. Ask where you are still pretending not to know. The goal is not to become someone who has read a lot. The goal is to become someone whose mind has been sharpened by what they have read. Because every worthwhile book leaves a mark. It teaches you to name something you felt but could not explain. It reveals a trap you almost walked into. It gives you language for truth. And in a world full of noise, language for truth is power. 3. Reflect every day. A surprising number of people live the same day for years. Same reactions. Same blind spots. Same emotional patterns. Same mistakes dressed in slightly different clothes. And because they never slowed down long enough to examine themselves, they call that life experience. But experience alone does not make you wiser. Reflection does. Without reflection, life passes through you without leaving real understanding behind. You stay busy. You stay active. You stay outwardly functional. But inwardly, nothing is being processed. Seneca understood this deeply. At the end of the day, he would review himself. What did I do well? Where did I fail? What can I do better tomorrow? Not to shame himself. To refine himself. That is what reflection is. Refinement. It is the habit of turning daily life into instruction. And if you do not do it, life will keep teaching you the same lesson until the consequences get louder. Think about how many people are frustrated with the same kinds of relationships, the same emotional triggers, the same work patterns, and still never ask the only question that matters. What part of me keeps helping create this? That question takes courage. Because reflection removes the comfort of blame. It is easier to say the world is unfair, people are fake, the job is toxic, the timing is bad. Sometimes all of that is true. But reflection asks a more difficult question. Even in an unfair world, where am I still careless? Where am I still impulsive? Where do I keep betraying my own better judgment? That is where intelligence becomes personal. A simple daily reflection practice can change more than most people realize. At the end of the day, ask yourself 3 questions. What did I do well today? What pulled me out of alignment? What did today teach me about myself? You can write it down. Record a voice memo. Sit in silence and think honestly. The format matters less than the honesty. And honesty is rare. Because many people want progress without self-confrontation. They want confidence without correction. They want wisdom without ever having to look directly at their own habits. But reflection is where self-respect is built. You stop living on autopilot. You stop drifting through moods and calling them personality. You start noticing patterns before they become consequences. Maybe you realize every bad decision this week began with fatigue. Maybe you see that every time you feel ignored, you become passive-aggressive. Maybe you notice that your anxiety spikes every time you overconsume information and underuse your body. These are not random discoveries. They are strategic advantages. Because when you can see yourself clearly, you become less vulnerable to your own blind spots. And the person who is not blind to himself is already ahead of most people. 4. Challenge your comfort zone on purpose. Comfort is seductive because it feels like safety. But often, it is just stagnation that happens to feel familiar. A lot of people tell themselves they want growth. What they really want is improvement without discomfort. Change without risk. Strength without exposure. Life does not work that way. Your mind grows when it is forced to adapt. Your courage grows when you move before you feel ready. Your intelligence grows when you stop hiding inside routines that no longer challenge you. The brain itself reflects this. When you attempt something unfamiliar, new pathways form. You are not just building skill. You are reshaping capacity. This is one reason the Stoics did not run from difficulty. They understood that resistance can strengthen the person who meets it well. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the obstacle becomes the way. And that idea sounds elegant until life makes it personal. Until it is your voice shaking in a room where you finally have to speak. Your hand hovering over the send button before a difficult message. Your first day doing something that makes you feel unqualified. Your decision to stop tolerating disrespect that you once excused just to keep the peace. That is where growth really begins. Not in theory. In friction. And there is a more uncomfortable truth here. Sometimes what keeps people in their comfort zone is not fear of failure. It is fear of losing the identity built around being the person who could have. As long as they never truly try, they can keep fantasizing about who they might have been. But action exposes reality. And reality demands humility. That is why deliberate discomfort is so important. It returns you to truth. Pick one thing each week that stretches you. Not something reckless. Something real. Speak in the meeting instead of rehearsing your thoughts in silence. Start the difficult conversation instead of carrying resentment into another week. Learn the skill that has intimidated you for years. Put yourself in environments where you are no longer the most comfortable or the most admired. Because comfort has a hidden cost. When you stay where nothing is demanded of you, you begin to shrink without noticing. Your instincts soften. Your confidence becomes conditional. Your identity gets tied to familiarity. Then one day life changes without your permission, and suddenly the comfort zone that once felt protected becomes a prison. So train before life forces the lesson on you. Lean into manageable difficulty. Enough to stretch you, not enough to shatter you. Over time something incredible happens. What once felt impossible starts feeling normal. The version of you that used to hesitate becomes the version that acts. And in a culture where many people avoid discomfort until avoidance ruins them, the person who walks into challenge voluntarily becomes uncommon and powerful. 5. Embrace lifelong learning. There is a kind of arrogance that does not look like arrogance. It looks like certainty. It sounds like a person who already has an answer for everything. A person who no longer asks real questions. A person who mistakes familiarity for mastery. That kind of mind becomes rigid. And a rigid mind becomes fragile the moment reality changes. The wisest people are not the ones who know everything. They are the ones who stay teachable. Marcus Aurelius, despite power beyond what most people can imagine, remained open to correction. That matters because power often makes people intellectually lazy. The higher they rise, the less they think they need to learn. But wisdom works the other way. The deeper you go, the more you realize how much remains unseen. Lifelong learning is not about collecting credentials. It is about staying mentally alive. It is choosing curiosity over ego. Adaptation over pride. Growth over performance. And in this era, that matters more than ever. The world changes fast. Industries shift. Social norms change. Technology rewires attention. Old assumptions expire quietly while people are still defending them like they are permanent truths. If you stop learning, you do not stay in place. You slowly become outdated. And that includes more than career skills. You should keep learning about people. About power. About communication. About your own patterns. About what history keeps repeating because human nature has not changed nearly as much as technology has. You do not need a classroom for this. Curiosity is enough to begin. Follow what genuinely interests you, but do not only stay there. Go beyond your preferences. Study things that challenge your worldview. If you are practical by nature, read philosophy. If you are abstract, learn something concrete. If you tend to think emotionally, study logic. If you tend to live in your head, study people. Because intelligence grows not only from depth, but from range. Podcasts can help. Courses can help. Books, lectures, essays, conversation, observation, all of it helps if you are actually engaged. But learning is not passive consumption. It is active transformation. Ask yourself often, what idea have I changed my mind about recently? What am I still naive about? What am I resisting learning because it threatens my current identity? Those questions keep you dangerous in the best sense. Not because you become aggressive, but because you become harder to outgrow, harder to mislead, and harder to trap inside old thinking. A stagnant mind becomes predictable. A learning mind remains free. 6. Cultivate emotional intelligence. Some people know a lot and still ruin their lives in relationships. They can analyze markets, memorize information, explain complex systems, and still misread a room, mishandle conflict, sabotage trust, or let one emotional moment damage something valuable. That is because intelligence without emotional intelligence is incomplete. If you cannot understand yourself, you will not manage yourself well. If you cannot read others, you will keep misjudging motives, timing, and tone. And if you cannot communicate clearly under pressure, your knowledge will constantly be weakened by your behavior. This is where emotional intelligence matters. Self-awareness, empathy, self-regulation, communication. Those are not soft skills. They are survival skills. Especially in a world where many interactions are shaped by ego, insecurity, status games, hidden resentment, and emotional projection. The Stoics were often misunderstood as emotionless. They were not. They were disciplined. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself every morning that he would meet difficult people. Meddling people. Ungrateful people. Arrogant people. Dishonest people. That was not cynicism. It was preparation. He understood something deeply realistic: people act from ignorance, fear, wounded pride, and distorted perception more often than they act from wisdom. Once you understand that, you stop taking every behavior personally. That changes everything. Think of how many conflicts escalate not because the issue is huge, but because neither person can regulate emotion long enough to respond wisely. Someone interrupts you. You feel disrespected. Your tone changes. They react to your tone. Now the real issue is buried under emotional debris. Emotional intelligence interrupts that pattern. It starts with noticing your internal state sooner. What are you feeling right now? What triggered it? What story is your mind creating around it? Maybe your anger is actually embarrassment. Maybe your defensiveness is fear. Maybe your impatience has nothing to do with the other person and everything to do with the pressure you have been carrying all day. When you learn to name what is happening inside you, you become less controlled by it. Then comes empathy. Not naive empathy. Not blind trust. Not pretending everyone means well. Real empathy is clearer than that. It is the ability to understand what may be driving someone without surrendering your judgment. It is seeing the wound without excusing the weapon. Seeing the insecurity without submitting to the manipulation. That kind of emotional intelligence is powerful because it helps you stay calm where others become reactive. You listen better. You observe more. You speak more precisely. You stop oversharing with the wrong people and under-explaining with the right ones. In practical terms, pause before reacting. Especially when emotion surges. Breathe. Wait. Let the first impulse pass. Not every feeling deserves immediate expression. And not every truth needs to be delivered at the exact moment you feel it. Journaling helps here too. Review your emotional moments. Where did you lose yourself? Where did you remain steady? What pattern keeps showing up? Because the ability to understand emotion without being governed by it is one of the clearest signs of maturity. And maturity is a form of intelligence most people do not respect until they desperately need it. 7. Prioritize physical health. This final habit is the one many people underestimate because it seems too basic. But nothing about your mind is separate from your body. Your thoughts are affected by your sleep. Your mood is affected by your movement. Your focus is affected by your food. Your patience is affected by your nervous system. Your emotional resilience is affected by how physically depleted you are. So when people say they want a sharper mind while neglecting their body, what they usually want is mental performance without biological responsibility. It does not work. You cannot consistently think clearly from a system that is underrested, overstimulated, undernourished, and physically stagnant. Research keeps confirming what common sense already knows. Movement improves blood flow to the brain. Sleep supports memory, regulation, and recovery. Nutrition affects cognition. Hydration affects attention. But beyond research, you have probably already lived this truth. You know what it feels like to make everything harder because you are tired. To become more reactive because you are overstimulated. To lose mental sharpness after days of low sleep and constant input. To mistake physical depletion for personal weakness. A lot of people are not failing because they are incapable. They are failing because they are dysregulated. That distinction matters. So start with the fundamentals. Eat in a way that supports clarity rather than just convenience. More whole foods. Less constant sugar and processed noise. Drink enough water. Stop acting like your brain can perform well while your body is running on chaos. Protect sleep like it matters, because it does. Not just for energy, but for judgment. The tired mind becomes impulsive. Emotionally fragile. Less disciplined. Easier to tempt, easier to provoke, easier to deceive. Move your body every day in some form. Walk. Lift. Stretch. Train. Do something that reminds your system it was built for action, not just consumption. You do not need perfection. You need consistency. The Stoics valued discipline and moderation for a reason. A person who cannot govern appetite, rest, and physical routine will usually struggle to govern thought as well. And once you understand that, physical health stops being vanity. It becomes mental infrastructure. Your body is not separate from your intelligence. It is the vessel your intelligence has to work through. So if you want a stronger mind, build a body that supports one. So let's bring this together. If you want to become smarter than the people around you, not in a performative sense, but in a grounded, practical, quietly powerful sense, start here. Learn to focus completely so your mind stops living in fragments. Read widely and consistently so your thinking gains depth and range. Reflect every day so your experience turns into wisdom. Challenge your comfort zone so your capacity keeps expanding. Embrace lifelong learning so your mind stays flexible and alive. Cultivate emotional intelligence so your knowledge is matched by self-mastery. And prioritize physical health so your brain has the foundation it needs to function at its best. None of these habits are flashy. That is exactly why they matter. The world trains people to chase what looks impressive. But real strength is usually built in private. Quietly. Repeatedly. Without applause. That is true of the body. And it is even more true of the mind. The Stoics knew that growth is not about outperforming everyone else. It is about governing yourself better than you did yesterday. And the more honestly you practice that, the more something begins to change. You stop being easy to distract. Easy to provoke. Easy to impress. Easy to manipulate. You become calmer. Sharper. Harder to fool. More difficult to move off your center. And in a society built on emotional noise, shallow performance, and endless imitation, that kind of intelligence is rare enough to look like power. So here is the real question. Which of these 7 habits is missing most from your life right now? Is it focus? Reflection? Emotional discipline? The courage to leave comfort? The humility to keep learning? Let me know in the comments. I read them, and I want to hear where this landed for you. And if this video gave you something real, something you can actually carry into your life today, subscribe to the channel and stay with us. Because this channel is not about empty motivation. It is about building a mind that stays steady in a manipulative world. A life with more clarity, more discipline, and more inner authority. Your sharper mind is not going to appear all at once. It will be built in habits. In silence. In honesty. In daily choices no one else sees. Start there. And I will see you in the next video.